Working on the Javelin again.
This is another situation where when you take on a vehicle that's off the beaten path, if this was a Mustang or a Camaro, you could buy the part and come right to your house and just install it. Well, this is a deal where the headliner was falling down, so we had the whole interior ripped out of it anyway. By the time we got it out, you could see that it's just pressed insulation. And then there's a skin that's adhered to it. When that starts to drop, somebody previously tried to fix it, and now it's so busted up at the fiberglass. Being that it's made out of fiberglass already, it's the insulation. When you just put the resin that you mix up, this stuff is expensive. And if you don't mix it right, you waste a lot. If you put too much hardener in there, it hardens up really quick. It's just trying to get the ratio of the hardener just right, and it'll work out fine. But you can just brush that on and it soaks into the fiberglass, and that's it. It's like your Corvette body. But where it's broken, you take this cloth, and this is all busted up. You see air bubbles. You try to work the bubbles out. This can be, cut out. If it's not strong enough, it's just a headliner, but it can always be fixed. If you screw up, you can cut it, grind it out, put more glass in there, bondo it up. Fiberglass it up and bondo. You can make all kinds of stuff. Guys will make kick panels with their speakers, and you lay this fleece over it and you fiberglass it up like that. You see it on all those shows like Chip Foose and stuff like that. And it's stuff that you can do, make your car custom. It's not that expensive, and it'll really show good when you're finished with it and look really cool. That stuff on its own has no strength to it at all. This is the stuff that's strong. And when they make boats and stuff like that, this is what they're laying in here, and this is the strongest. You'll see other fiberglass products where it's chopped up stranded fiberglass, and they got a gun that they just comes out with a force, and it fills like a boat mold or whatever like that. When you're making parts that have to require strength, like a hood or whatever, then they use layers of cloth, and you got to get this all soaked wet, and they got rollers and stuff, and you get all the air bubbles out you can, then they'll lay it the other way, and as you build up with layers, the more you got with the resin in between, it gets stronger and stronger. That's why you can see some fiberglass parts, like a fiberglass ladder is really durable and strong. A lot of people knock, like a fiberglass street rod or a kit car or whatever. They're strong and they don't rust. It's just that when you get in accidents, they shatter and it's a lot more work. But anything can be fixed out. You cut out that section and get another, piece. When this all gets intermingled and you can squeeze out all the bubbles, that's the hardest you can imagine. It's fantastic. You can see more of the grain pattern in there, but that will hold a shape. Now that we have a hard surface to work with and it holds its shape, we'll come in, grind this out. Anywhere there's a crack, here's a crack. And in the process of the fiberglass curing, it'll make a shape that you don't want. And the only way you can fix it is by putting more fiberglass down and put like a barrier, like some plastic, and put weights on it so that when it dries, it'll hold this shape instead of being buckled the wrong direction. What we have now is a hard surface of fiberglass in the back, and you can see where this whole thing had been fractured, from getting it in and out in the past, and it has cracks in it. So it didn't hold its shape. We're gonna end up going down to that hard surface that we made, and you scarf this out, you start doing these. Depending on how deep your groove is, you keep making layers, and you gotta rough it up. It's gotta have something to bite to. And you keep on laying it until it's level, and then later we'll be just taking a rough grinder and, you know, getting it all smooth. And if it's really rough, then you can use Bondo and smooth it out. But you're gonna be using the material that has like a fuzzy backing, and that covers up a lot. How many people are sticking their head up and looking at your headliner? If it was rough as a cob, it's gonna show.
We were able to buy extra hardener at the auto parts store. They didn't really give us enough.
That loose glass isn't bad because it'll just become part of the mixture. You could grab that and go right over the top of that groove once you get that. Yeah.
Bubbles in here.
That is the kiss of death. If you get air bubbles in there, then it's just weak. It's not connected. So you got to take your grinder and cut that out and re-glass over the top of it.
I'm putting the carpeting in the Javelin here, trying to trim it for a nice tight fit up under the dash here. It's gonna need a little bit of adhesive there. And like I said, I didn't put any of that black tar type insulation underneath there, but this carpet did have a jute padding with it. And for filler, I'm using some of that high temperature bubble wrap. Trying to keep it to a minimum though. So far I just have a strip in right here. I might need a strip back here. Looking forward to getting the interior back in this car. Here I'm cleaning up my seatbelt bolts. Some of them had like a plastic that was, I don't know if it was injected in there or what. There's like a groove cut in these bolts. A couple of them stripped pretty bad. I'm gonna run a dye over them to try to save them. I'll be running a tap through all the holes in the car too. We're getting ready to primer the hood here, and we're using a build primer. This stuff has a catalyst that activates it, so there's a hot life to it. We refitted the shop with an Atlas Copco screw type compressor. Keeping up with that paint gun, no problem. 100% duty cycle. Roughed out the Bondo, it's an 80 grit, then went to the filler primer. It's a two-part epoxy primer, real thick, and thought that would blend it out. And not being professional, you gotta start somewhere. You can realize how easy it is to screw up paint. First, my shirt went into it, so I tucked my shirt in. Then, as the paint was running real low and I was trying to get further in, big mistake, the tail end of the bottom of the cup dragged the surface. And then I'm pointing out where it needed more, and my finger touched the filler primer, and it's like a liquid Bondo up in front here, and put my finger into it. So it's just really frustrating, and no matter how hard you try, there's going to be a fly in the ointment. This is why you want to do like body work in the winter time too, in a heated garage, because we were doing it outside, wind was blowing, so I'd have better sunlight on it. And I've heard of guys that had a perfect paint job and a moth came in, and because there's lights on in the garage, and the moth got into the paint and starts dancing all over and wrecked this guy's paint job. So you name it, it can happen to you when you're painting, and you just can't get too frustrated. We're in the beginning stage, so it all works up to the final coat. We just used one of these old spray guns that has the pressure going through here, and it siphons, it draws paint up and mixes with the air, and you waste a lot. I mean, as we were spraying, it uses higher pressure. Most of it is bouncing off the surfaces you're spraying. We are going to be getting better spray guns that are high volume, low pressure, and that way when it's gravity feed, doesn't need as much force, you don't have as much bouncing off the surface, and you'll save material. That paint was pretty expensive. I don't remember how much it cost, but the more you waste, it's just costing you money. In order to make this a smooth area, I'm outside, it's a windy day, there's all these high points, big nurkles poking through that would be ugly on your headliner, and I'm going to grind them down. When you do this, you've got to have a respirator on, and it's going to be all in you, and you're going to have to take a shower because fiberglass is a very irritant. It would be nice if we had a whole plastic suit for like a hazmat guy, and you sweat inside them. But all this stuff's got to be knocked down. After we get that knocked down, it'll be easier to put other coats on there and get it level and keep. Might even spread some Bondo over it to get it smooth. It was going like this, so now that we got it shaped the way we want, and gouge it out back again, and then we'll have to reinforce it back here, and then when you fiberglass, because if it doesn't fit up in the roof line, you're going to see all this waviness. So there's more repairs that have to be done on all the brakes. Some of this fiberglass didn't get all the air bubbles out of it, and the corners especially need cloth put in there. So it's just back and forth, and finally, this fits up nice and good. The edges are done. Then we'll flip it over and we'll use this stuff called Tiger here. It's like chewing tobacco, bits of fiberglass and like Bondo mixed together. You'll spread it smooth, sand it. You can just paint it if you want.
I'm heating up a piece of metal and then stabbing it into the carpet to get my seatbelt bolt hole. I found the hole with a pick here. The hole is kind of made and cauterized and one easy step there. I gotta be careful I don't start a fire doing that though. I imagine if I was to try to run a drill bit through there, it would catch a strand and pull it out of the carpet. Well, here's the finished product of the carpeting. Hopefully you can see it. It turned out pretty good. I worked on it on and off pretty much all day. I only used a couple small pieces of this up along the rocker there and in front of that seat riser on both the driver and passenger side. Here's all the cutoffs. There wasn't a whole lot of waste. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching.